When Disney first announced that their next big branding exercise was going to be revisionist live-action takes on the classics of their animated canon and were starting with Maleficent, I didn't get it. See, while there's no denying that Maleficent is one of, if not the, all-time great Disney villainess, she's one of those characters who's interesting mostly because there's not actually much to her. Sleeping Beauty is one of the broadest, most archly drawn stories in the Mouse House's golden age, and its villain is no different. What makes Maleficent so memorable is that she's super evil pretty much just for the sake of evil. No real motive, nothing to gain, just bad to be bad. Basically Disney's Satan. That's why she's fun. So I wasn't really seeing how you wrap a character like that around the obviously Wicked-inspired framework of an expanded backstory without diminishing her. Having now seen the film, I'm still not sure they actually found an answer, but in trying, they've come up with a bizarre, disturbing, shockingly dark work of pop culture revisionism and at least attempted feminist deconstruction that careens wildly from brave to sloppy at a frenetic pace that suggests a studio realizing too late that what they've called into existence and trying to mitigate its insane rampage after the fact. I don't know that I can say I'm impressed by this movie, but I'm astonished that it exists. Whereas Wicked took a delicate approach to deconstructing a classic by suggesting a new backstory that added shades of grey to the moral dimensions of the canonical characters, Maleficent's starting point is everything you know is wrong. It posits that the titular villain was actually the hero of a much bigger story, and that most of the characters we thought were the good guys were actually evil, stupid, or unimportant, and that the original Disney feature and the fairy tales that inspired it were lies. Works of anti-Maleficent and implicitly anti-female and anti-magic propaganda, and that this telling is seeking to correct them. And someone at Disney actually signed off on this. Wow. In the new backstory, Maleficent starts out as a super powerful human-sized fairy who serves as the guardian leader of a heavily Miyazaki-inspired kingdom of nature spirits and mythological creatures adjacent to a human kingdom that constantly schemes to invade their peaceful realm and plunder their treasures. Once upon a time, she'd hoped a peace could be achieved when, as a girl, she fell in love with a human boy named Stefan, but it was not to be, and yeah, this is going exactly where you think it's going. Stefan grew into an ambitious social climber played at maximum sleaze level by Charlton Copley, and when the greedy human's dying king promises his throne to anyone who can neutralize the fairy leader, he reconnects with Maleficent in order to seduce her, drug her, and chop off her wings as a gruesome trophy for the kingdom. But he doesn't kill her, and like the movie heroines who suffered the full-on versions of what this one can only metaphorically allude to, when she wakes up, there's hell to pay. I'm not even exaggerating, guys. I'm not the only critic who picked up on it, and the gut-wrenching way Angelina Jolie chooses to play the sequence where Maleficent realizes she's been mutilated leaves very little room for interpretation. At the very least, the inciting incident of this story is a horrifying act of domestic abuse. But if you want to strip away the niceties of metaphor and subtext, this really feels like the Disney version of Kill Bill or I Spit on Your Grave. A fairy tale rape revenge story with the edge only slightly dulled because it seems like Jolie might be the only person in the production who actually gets the full extent of what's being suggested. Yikes. You can't say it's not a bold take on the material, at least. If the goal was to make Maleficent's rage so justified that the audience would enjoy watching her bring the pain to Stefan's kingdom, mission accomplished. Unfortunately, all of that is also just the first half hour of the movie, and since we need to wait at least one more hour to kill Stefan and call this a feature film, we need to make a second act detour into a recap of Sleeping Beauty. And it's there that the film loses its way. The big idea is that Maleficent reinvents herself as the familiar evil sorceress and puts the death sleep curse on Stefan's newborn daughter Aurora as her ultimate act of revenge. Much like in the original, 3 good fairies are charged with protecting her, but in this version they're so bad at it that Maleficent herself ends up shadowing the kid to make sure she lives long enough to die properly. But then they actually meet and start bonding, and Maleficent decides she needs to pull back and stop the curse herself somehow. Yeah, the second act is weird and clunky as it sounds, not helped by the fact that we keep cutting back to King Stefan taking way too long to work out a thuddingly obvious and over-telegraphed solution to fighting Maleficent once and for all. And while there are all kinds of interesting dimensions to Aurora and Maleficent's cross-generational girl talk bonding, the redemption arc just doesn't work out either narratively or viscerally. It feels like the film realizes too late just how dark its subtext was getting and tries unsuccessfully to pull back. Jolie plays the evil Maleficent so well, and the story makes her revenge so sympathetic, and then we're supposed to accept that all it takes to soften her up is hanging out with an admiring teenage hanger-on? I'm not buying it, and that's to say nothing of the creepy undercurrent of an adorable baby being a magic cure for being angry about your ex-boyfriend crippling you. It's the Magneto problem all over again. The confidently evil Maleficent is much more fun to watch, her desire for vengeance feels more than justified, and the humans are almost all either just as slimy as Stefan or boring non-entities, so why am I supposed to not just root for her to wipe them all out again? It'd certainly be a more fun movie. Fortunately, things come back to life for a bravura third act once the obligatory retread material has been literally put to bed and the filmmakers can get back to the story they're actually interested in. It's even more messy, gonzo, and tonally scattershot than the beginning, but I have to admire how sadistically enthusiastic it is about taking a sledgehammer to the original Sleeping Beauty lore before morphing into f***ing Castlevania for the big finale. Maleficent feels like a movie planned by committee but hijacked by a lunatic, the kind of insane project that could either be a huge hit or get tons of people fired, or maybe both. A shambling freak of nature barely held together by sheer force of will on the part of Jolie, whose thundering, scenery-obliterating performance suggests nothing more than the maniacal love child of Mae West and Vegeta. on bath salts. I don't know who convinced Disney this was a good idea, and I'm frankly not even sure it was a good idea, what with the draggy second act and the what were they thinking adult subtext, but I'm not going to forget it anytime soon, I'll tell you that. See you next time.
Oh dear. What an awkward situation.